New Buddha-ware Dhamma talks. Jeff Hunt presents a talk on some aspect of the Buddha's teaching.
Okay, so I thought this week we'd talk about forgiveness. Someone was saying to me during the week that they could never forgive so-and-so for something that they had done. And I asked them, why not? Now, the answer was very interesting because for me that was actually a misconception of what forgiveness was, and that is why it couldn't happen. So she started saying that forgiveness would mean that she would have to like this person, or she would have to accept what it was that he had done, which she wasn't prepared to do. She wasn't prepared to accept that he was any kind of a good person, or that he ever would be. He hadn't apologized for what he had done. This went on for quite a while, and I think you can see, perhaps, if you think about it, that her focus is on him. So in her mind, all the attempt to forgive, or the very thought of forgiving him for what he had done, was focused on him. Because when I ask her what makes it difficult, the whole account says absolutely nothing about her at all, but is only focused on him. Because in her mind, forgiveness would mean that she has to accept what he did. So gently I try to say, well, okay, I mean, that is perfectly understandable. When people do dreadful things, or when they're very hurtful or they're abusive, that has a huge impact on one, and one is hurt. So all of that is perfectly understandable. However, if one then takes that as one's point of focus for the forgiveness can't happen. Let's just turn it around. Forgiveness is a form of letting go. It isn't some kind of mystical event or some huge moral endeavor. It's about understanding one's own attitude and reaction and hurt to this event. As I've said many times before, we tend to be absent to ourselves. So if somebody's hurt us, we keep thinking of the hurt and how this person brought that hurt about. Okay? What we may not notice, because we are absent to ourselves, is that I am carrying the hurt. I'm still carrying the hurt. I'm still hurting. I am feeling probably anger towards that person. I may be feeling vengeful. I may have vengeful thoughts, and I may feel resentful. Resentment is a kind of low-grade anger that's burning away. Now, all of that is going on in me, but for some reason I don't think that's got anything to do with the forgiveness, because the forgiveness is now focused on this person and what this person has done, or maybe failed to do. And I'm not denying that, that's perfectly understandable. If we think of forgiveness as, okay, to forgive, I've got to start with myself. I am still suffering that hurt. So where is this suffering located? It's no longer located in this person or what they've done. It's now located in me. If I want to stop suffering, then I have to let go of that, which I admit isn't particularly easy. I have to let go of that. I have to be aware that, for example, if revengeful thoughts are coming into mind, then they are mine. That's not good for me. That's a block to my moral, spiritual development. I would like to be at peace in my mind. I would like to go on being, if you like, a better person, whatever that means. But now I am blocked because I am still carrying that event and carrying negative feelings towards that person. Just to kick off forgiveness, I should really start with myself. No, I'm not pretending this is easy, okay? No, I know it isn't in some cases. But if I start with myself, I can then, if I can just start loosening up my own clinging to the hurt and the feelings of indignation and anger, then I can look at that person and think, okay, so who are you? What are you? How did that come about? I might gain some insight into this person and their behavior, because no doubt they're suffering in their own way, and it's no secret that people who are abusive have usually been abused. Seems to be a law of nature. But if I start with looking at what I'm carrying, the hurt I'm still carrying, maybe I can, and just subdue that a little, maybe I can then revisit that event in a more liberating way for myself. Right? I mean, I'm not so interested in liberating this other person, especially if they've hurt me, but I don't want to go on suffering the memory and the indignation and the resentment of what that other person's done. Now, ideally, of course, in an ideal world, it might be possible to revisit that situation. For example, in the judicial system, we have a movement called restorative justice. Restorative justice means instead of trying to punish a person, which is retributive justice, we try to restore some normality by bringing the two people together, and that person, who now maybe is in prison, for example, if it's something really bad that they've done, has to give an account to the victim as to how come you did that. This is the real person that you've hurt. This is not object. This is a person, and this person is suffering, like you also suffer sometimes. What have you got to say for yourself about what has happened? Of course, this is quite a painful experience, but this restorative justice is taking place and coming in more and more into the judicial system. And sometimes, of course, this person will see the error of their ways and see that they are responsible for that hurt, and may sometimes even burst into tears or try to give some account or apologize. Occasionally that doesn't happen. Well, at least they've been given that chance. So that's a kind of a healing process, which you find in the reconciliation meetings that took place in South Africa after dreadful things had been done. And imagine a torturer and the torture victim having to come together. Not easy. Desmond Tutu chaired those sessions, and sometimes it was absolutely heartrending for everybody, including Desmond Tutu himself was in tears on occasion. But it was magic when the torturer could see the enormity of what they had done and were willing to take that on. I won't say that happens 100% of the time, but at least a chance has been given. But you see how I'm trying to look at forgiveness in a more constructive, healing sort of way, in which everyone is healing, everyone is learning. Probably the most difficult situation, or one of the most difficult situations, is where the person who has hurt you is someone who is very close to you. So if it's your father, your mother, your brother, why is this particularly difficult? Why is it particularly difficult if you've been, as a child perhaps, abused by mother, father, brother, grandfather, whatever? Why is this so damaging, and why is it so difficult to forgive? It almost seems perverse to ask a person to forgive their immediate relative for some horrendous thing that they've done in the past. But you see, if you think that actually you're not asking that you now think that this is a good person or that what they did was acceptable, that is not what forgiveness means. The reason it's difficult is quite easy to understand, really, and that is that your identity is tied up with this person. Because if it's your mother, your father, your grandfather, whatever, of course you may have grown up with that. That person is part of your own life history. So it's like the damage that was done has torn the identity. That the damage that's been done can't be fixed just by my wishing this person well. That's not going to work. Now, how do we go about that? That's more difficult, because now it's about my identity an assault on one's self-worth or self-esteem is very difficult to cope with, but it's not impossible if one starts seeing that we all have a constructed self. Each one of us is largely the result of things that were not in our control, that have molded us, experiences, our culture, our upbringing, all sorts of things. Every one of us has an identity that's been shaped by forces beyond our own control or making or influence. Now, those forces are sometimes destructive forces. So one has been subjected to formative influences which are destructive, and now it's become absorbed into one's identity. How does one deal with that? Well, at least from the Buddha Dhamma point of view, is that if I can sit in meditation and let go of thoughts, memories, resentment, anger, at least go in that direction, then I am escaping from any identity, let alone a particular identity. Moving towards, if you like, selflessness, or what is sometimes called the unconditioned. So it's as though all the conditions that made me what I am, what I think I am, are falling away, and I'm free of all conditions, ideally, but at least I could perhaps start letting go and being more free of those conditions that have made me what I am. So now I'm becoming more a liberated, universal person, that I am open to being to molding my identity or remolding my identity, being open to all sorts of possibilities, being more creative in my life, making decisions about being a different person. Can one just be a different person? And it sounds ridiculous, but why not? People do sometimes make big decisions about their lives and who they think they are. But one has to see that one has to release oneself from this bondage of resentment against someone that has hurt one, and that hurt has now partly shaped one's identity. If one can only, I think, through mindfulness, which is quite a long path really, start to let go of one's conditioning, moving towards the unconditioned, in which one is no longer Peter or John or Mary or whatever. One is just an awareness, if you like, an aware being. Then one is completely free. Then there is no hurt of any kind. But at least one can move in that direction through meditation. And so forgiveness, I think, in a wider sense, is very much tied up with the whole Noble Eightfold Path, with the whole path of liberation from this sort of small, grasping, perhaps hurt person that life has made me. I'm not made of stone, so I'm not carved out of stone. If I'm not carved out of stone, then there's a possibility of movement, growth. If I were made of stone and a sculptor had made me look at this awkward shape, then I wouldn't be able to move out of it. But I'm not made of stone. I have the power of self-awareness, aware of how I came to be what I am, and how there are possibilities that are within my reach. So all of this is really forgiveness, because the whole thing is forgiveness. You might say the whole path is forgiveness, because all of it is letting go of conditionality, of the conditions that have brought me to where I am. Now, it's true that some spiritual teachers give the impression that you could just do that by clicking your fingers. And maybe that does work for some people, but for many of us it is a path to be followed. So to forgive somebody is not to be focused on that person or the wrongness of what they did. And then thinking, I've got to let go of that. No, you're not letting go of that. You're letting go of the danger of your becoming a resentful, embittered person. That's what you're letting go of. You deal with that first and then revisit with a new perspective whatever has happened to you, you know. So that, for me, is a much healthier, healing way of looking at forgiveness. So I'll stop there. I don't know what thoughts you have about it.
Yeah, in the examples you gave, if I can say, the perpetrator of the ill was always regretting what they had done. But what happens if you, the person who wants to forgive them, look at them and say, well, you know, do you regret what you do? And the person says, no, I don't. I think you deserved everything you got. I'm glad I hit you in the face. I'm glad I stood us up. Or if they turn around and just lie.
But you see, you are not responsible for they being a malformed person.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? You if somebody is an abuser or whatever conditions brought them to that, that's something that only they can ultimately face and deal with. And if they can't deal with it, they haven't dealt with it. You've got to let that go. That is their responsibility. Your forgiving them is nothing to do with trying to change them into a good person. They are what they are. That's, in a nutshell, it's their responsibility. I mean, one would hope that there could be some dialogue, which is a mutual healing, and that should be given a try, but very often it doesn't work. So then just let go of it. At least you can say, well, you know, try. And I think that's the whole point of the kind of reconciliation and restorative approach, is that it's so much better if everybody can be liberated. But if they can't, you liberate yourself. Imagine going through the whole of life feeling resentment. How can that be good? I mean, how can that be good for you? And actually, it's probably not going to be good for anybody else either, because your person who's carrying resentment, unfortunately, is sometimes not going to be very kindly towards others because of the hurt they're carrying. I mean, I think everybody in this room will have suffered some hurt, you know, from it's just the nature of life, isn't it? You shouldn't ever think that, you know, I'm the only one. There are very few people who go through life without being battered in one way or another. It's just the nature of life, isn't it? You see, and the thing about battering is that it's it has a knock-on effect, doesn't it? You know, it sends out ripples. The person who is battered goes on to batter others, and then they go on to batter others. And what does this phrase mean? I can forgive, but I can't forget. What is it? Because I don't get it, quite frankly. Because it's like, okay, I've forgiven, right? I've let it all go, but I'm not going to forget it. It sounds like a contradiction to me. I mean, because forgetting doesn't mean that it's dropped out of your memory entirely. Right? Because forgetting could mean two different things, couldn't it? One could be like, it's gone out of my memory entirely. The other one is that even though it might still be in my memory somewhere, it doesn't matter to me. It's of no significance anymore. That's the forgetting we're talking about, isn't it? Yeah, forgiving oneself is an interesting concept. But then I think the same thing applies, really, is that, you know, what is it to forgive yourself? If you've done something which you regret, let's say you've hurt somebody else pretty badly, what is it now to forgive yourself? Well, it's the same thing, really, is that you've understood the conditions that brought you to that point. You've acknowledged it, you've taken responsibility for it. Maybe you've apologise to the other person. It depends on the circumstances. Maybe you can't apologise to them, but you know, they may not be here anymore. But consider that. But then the really critical thing is that I am not the same person. That will never happen again. I've moved beyond that. When I did that, I was in a different place. I'm in this place, in which I am more liberated, more free, more wise, more compassionate. So that's the critical thing, that there's growth. Because you see, the alternative is starting to have a low self-worth, isn't it? Oh, I must be a really bad person, I did that. And it's like I'm now carrying it all the time. But carrying that all the time is certainly not going to make one a better person, is it? Only letting it go can. but with understanding and with the knowledge that that will not happen again, because I'm not in that place.
New Buddha way lets go of East and West and starts afresh in the life we have now. For more information, visit www.newbuddhaway.org.